Hello, hello. It's me again. Are you guys so surprised? You're probably sick of seeing me, but you know what? Here I am again. Maybe I'm sick of seeing myself live, but I want to put myself out there to talk about my what. Oh, wait, let me see here. Turn down the volume there. You don't want to hear echoing Shauna. So I always like to have my phone up to see who's listening. So I'm just on here again to talk about my new book, the Soulmate Dog book that I wrote about my beautiful Luna. And so it's so cool to have my very special guest with me right now. I have my friend Sharon, who is actually one of the people that I'm so grateful for that was on my launch team. So what she did is she got to take a sneak peek before my book was released. So she got to read it. And what's cool is she has a whole bunch of questions that she's going to ask me just from her insight from reading the book. So I just thought it'd be fun to share with you guys to say, hey, this is somebody that read the book and kind of maybe what she gathered from it and just some questions that she had. So it's going to be super fun. And so that's why we're here today to do this. So welcome, Sharon. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome, Shauna.
Yeah.
Well, first, congratulations for writing the book. It's awesome.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed reading it. And so I do have some questions. Could I start?
Yes, please do. I'm so excited. Yes.
Okay, so the first one is it's in chapter 3, and it's a story with you and Luna walking. So I thought I'd just read the paragraph from the book.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
In advance, I was so lucky that I got to read it. So you said, one day while walking with Luna in the apartment complex we lived in, there was a dead bird in the road. There was also a crow that was moving the bird little by little. I kept thinking, come on, crow, you can do it. Move it, move it. Strategizing in my head of how I was going to move this bird. The crow was clearly tuning into my thoughts and looking at me. It was as though the crow wanted me to be even more clear and patient. So more clear and patient I became. And then, voila, the crow picked up the bird and went off in flight. So my question, Shauna, is like, I know you're an amazing animal communicator. I've had you work with my cats, and we're at a distance. I'm in Canada and you're in the States, and that doesn't matter at all. And you've been able to tune into my cats. And I'm just wondering, you've got different stories of different animals. My question is, do all animals communicate with you the same? Like, or do they have different ways? Like, do birds have a different way of communicating than, say, a cat or a dog?
Yes, and I love that question. So they do. They all have their different ways, and it's interesting. So some communicate in more like subtle ways. So for example, like cats, sometimes they can be more subtle and be like, okay, like, do I want to share with you? Do I not? And then dogs can be like, oh, okay, like you're talking to me. You're really talking to me, right? And then horses are usually like up front and center. Like horses are like, bam, here's my thoughts. And then with birds, like wild animals and squirrels and stuff like that, especially the ravens and the crows, they have just this wisdom, and they kind of are like, okay. They're like, she gets us. Does she really get us? So they have that way that they communicate in that different way. They're like, okay, do I trust you? And then when they know that they trust that energy around them, then that's when like the squirrels and the crows open up more, when they know like, oh, okay, like she really does want to help us, or we have insight for each other. It's really cool.
So do you get pictures in your head, or do you get words, or how do you get the messages?
Yeah, I love that. So it's so cool that you asked that. So it comes in different ways. So what's really cool about animals is they're masters of that nonverbal communication, right? They just that telepathic heart to heart communication. So a lot of times with animals is, so sometimes they'll send me pictures, like I'll send them pictures and they'll send me pictures back because they're really good at tuning into that. Or sometimes it's a thought that'll just come to me, or a word, like they'll send me a thought, I'll send them a thought. Or sometimes it might be a sensation that I have in my body, or like a smell that I get. Or sometimes what's really interesting is when I'm in a session with somebody, like sometimes I'll be like, ooh, I really want some liver or sardines, and that's not something really I eat, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds really good. So it's like those kind of are the ways. But a lot of times they communicate with the words that they send from their mind to our mind, and those pictures that they send. It's so cool.
Oh, wow. And it does not matter if you're right there physically with them. Do you get a stronger sense than if you're over distance or just tuning in?
You know what? So sometimes this is going to sound crazy, but sometimes it can be actually easier from doing it from a distance. Because sometimes if you're right there with them, it's like, maybe the people might have like this preconceived notion or like, oh, I really want to know this. I really want to know this. So sometimes when it's from a distance, people can be more open. So then their pets are more open too. Not always, but sometimes that can really help. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, the next one I've got for you, Shauna, is in chapter 5, and it was about you and Luna out exploring. And so the paragraph is Luna was quite the explorer. She loved sniffing to see what kind of treasures might await her. One day while Luna was outside, she turned to the left and put her nose to work. Within seconds, she had discovered a mole that was not doing well and needed help. She picked up the mole and came to show me what she had found. I asked her to drop it, and she said, "Thank goodness," dropped it out of her mouth. She just looked at the mole, then looked at me, letting me know that we needed to keep this mole. I brought Luna back upstairs. Luckily, I had a little shoebox with a small hand towel to use to put the mole in. There was a vet clinic about 5 minutes from where we live, so I gathered up the mole and off to the vet we went. They could see the distress it was in and helped the mole make its transition out of distress. In this moment, Luna reminded me that we must always look out for our friends who might need help and pay attention to our surroundings.
Mhm.
And so I kind of picked that out because I'm just wondering, like Luna seems to have told you a lot of stories. Like she just seemed to have such a big heart, right? And great
Mhm.
compassion and like almost beyond her like being a dog. And she seemed like to me an evolved soul. Like I don't know
Mhm.
if that hits like does that make sense to you? And if she was an evolved soul or is an evolved soul, she would have been reincarnated. So do you believe that animals do in fact reincarnate like we do?
Yes, I love that question. And I love that you're able to gather all that. And absolutely, they do reincarnate and they can reincarnate. And definitely with Luna, she was definitely an evolved soul because she had, wisdom beyond wisdom. And I know that she was with me in previous lifetimes, but it was like lifetimes ago that I know it was. And, there's some of the ones that I know are in fact there. I haven't tuned into them 100%, but I just know that she was with me before because when we met, that first connection I had with Luna, there was just like a knowingness and a familiarness. I just was like, hey, I know this essence. I know this, like, this being, this soul, and that connection. So, absolutely, they do reincarnate. And I've actually worked with a lot of clients that have had pets that have come back to them in this life. And sometimes they might come back as a dog as a cat or a cat as a dog or, different things like that, which is so interesting, right?
Oh, yeah, that's so cool. Like it fascinates me to think that because I do believe that we as humans reincarnate, but the fact that, our animals could too, it's just incredible. It's yeah,
Mhm.
it's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it?
It is, right? When you think about that, it's like, wow, okay. And we just know when we have them come into our lives again, we just know. It's like we may not know right away, but eventually we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah, and it kind of brings me to another thought I had. Like I had a cat that I was like he was my soulmate cat. Pumpkin was his name. He passed 3 years ago. And I kind of, I believe this theory of reincarnation. And so I was kind of waiting for a cat that I thought maybe would be Pumpkin again, but it didn't happen. I got a different cat. And you actually told me that Pumpkin sent Frankie to me for his energy. And I believe that. Like Frankie has so much energy and he is exactly what I needed when I got Frankie.
Hmm.
But I'm wondering, so with reincarnation, do you think that we can pick, like can we somehow in any way control getting a reincarnated animal, or does it just it's the universe decides?
Yeah, from my experience, it's just the universe and it just happens. It's like it'd be nice to be like, oh, hey, like I'd love it this way or love it that way, but it's just the magic that just happens and is. And it's just and sometimes they can be like, hey, I'm gonna come back or I'm not gonna come back right now. Like I'm working with you in like a different way, right? So sometimes they work with us in like a different way too. Like,
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah,
mhm.
that makes sense. Okay, another one. I've got chapter 6, and it was about Luna and her refusal to learn tricks. I thought this was really funny. I thought it was really funny. And it goes like this. You wrote, some dogs love tricks, but that was not the case with Luna. She was not amused with the human fascination with such nonsense. I made many valiant efforts to try to teach her to shake. She would give me a look like, Shauna, why must you insist I learn this? What is the point of all this? So I learned to not push her into doing something she had no desire to do. And I just thought, that's so interesting. And I my little cat Sheba, she's older now, but when she was young, she could do tricks. Like she would fetch a little ball, a little fuzzy ball.
Oh,
Yeah, and she was really like, she's bright, right? And she was super active when she was little. So is the trick thing, is that, and I've also actually seen like cats trained to do tricks. Like you can train cats, I think, as well as dogs. So is it an individual personality thing in your opinion? Like whether animals want to learn tricks, or is it the humans' pressure on them, or what do you think it is?
ooh, I love that question. And Lee's in the house. Hey, Lee. It's so
Hi,
good to
Lee.
see you, Lee. Oh my goodness. So yeah, so it is. So it's like sometimes that pressure of like they're like, oh gosh, I really don't want to learn this. And we can kind of feel that from them. And then sometimes they're like, hey, I really want to learn this, or I want to do it this way, because they have their own individual ways. And Luna was just like, no, you know what? Like, I don't want to do that. Like I'm my own person. And it's interesting because a lot of people think like labs are like, oh, they like, hey, Linda, they like, fetch and want to play with tennis balls and want to do this. Well, Luna, her favorite thing when we were staying with my parents, they had these little fir cones in their front yard, and she loved to run around with those in her mouth and have me throw those for her. Like that was her thing. So just like us, they have their individual things, and sometimes some cats even like to fetch and do those things, which is so fun, right? To see that. And sometimes a dog can act more like a cat or a cat more like a dog. It's so interesting.
Yeah, they're all really like, they're like us, right? They're individual personalities, I guess.
Yes,
Right? Yeah. Makes sense.
exactly. 100%. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last one that I was really interested in, well, I was interested in your whole book. I think it's amazing, Shauna. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you so much.
And it was about Linus, about your cat.
Mhm.
And it was after he passed. It was the night he passed. And the paragraph goes like this. Linus always used to lay by my left side near the second pillow on my bed. The night he passed, I really missed his presence. I remember laying in my bed, being drawn to put my left hand in the pillow to the left of me. All of a sudden, through the pillow, I could feel Linus's presence. I felt his paw in my hand and could feel the heartbeat of his paw in my hand. I enjoyed being in this moment as it brought me such comfort. He wanted to remind me that the heartbeat of his presence will always be there within me. He also reminded me that all I had to do was ask, and that all it took for his presence to beckon itself to me. This was a reminder to notice the signs we may otherwise dismiss. When we give space for these signs, they show up. It's when we question them that draws them away from us. And I just thought that was beautiful. Do you still have Linus? Like, does he come through to you?
You know what? He hasn't in a while, but it's interesting. I feel his presence, actually, speaking of the reincarnation and how we are tying into that, like sometimes I kind of feel his energy in my dog Cool Up. So sometimes I feel like
Mm.
little pieces of him in there. So sometimes that can happen too, just for maybe just a brief moment of time. It's like Linus kind of comes through and I feel him in Cool Up. So sometimes he does do that. And it's just, oh, he was such a beautiful boy.
Yeah, that's that. I felt that with my cat Pumpkin that passed away. I got really ill a couple of years ago, and I was, in bed a lot and just sick, couldn't get up. And a couple of times when I was really at a low, I mean, it was like Pumpkin was there. Like he was right where he used to lie, right beside me. I honest to God, felt like I felt his fur, you know
Yeah.
and just his warm presence, and it was just the most comforting thing. Like it was unbelievably beautiful. So I think when we love those animals, I think their spirit stays around us. I love it. I love the idea of it. And I think the question too is, and you said it a little bit with Linus, you see Linus a little bit in your dog, and I sometimes see flashes of Pumpkin in Frankie. It's like Frankie's personality is very, very, very active and energetic, and Pumpkin was laid back, very laid back. And every once in a while, I just kind of think like Frankie just becomes pumpkin for like a couple of seconds and just kind of, is that possible? Do you think?
Absolutely, because I've had that experience too. Absolutely, and definitely that experience that you had where you could feel his fur like that. I definitely feel he was there because he's like, hey, I can help you. And one thing Luna taught me is sometimes like with her not physically being here, sometimes she's even more with me because her presence has no limitations, right? Because it can be right there at any given moment.
Mm.
And I feel like, it's like they remind us to see the untangible that we feel like within our heart, right? It's like that tangible that we don't always see with our eyes, but we feel it and we know it with our heart. Because when you have that experience with Pumpkin, you just knew when you
Yeah.
could feel it, right? You could feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, no, this is just amazing. I mean, I just absolutely loved reading your book. And anybody who's watching who hasn't got it yet or is thinking about ordering it, I do it because it's
Oh,
really
thank you so
awesome.
much.
It's
That
awesome.
means so much to me. And Linda said that was beautiful too. That the story that you just shared. And yeah, well, I look forward to you catching the replay, Linda. Thanks for listening now. And she said that her deceased kitty Andrew learned to roll a little ball back and forth. That's so funny. Like cats are so smart like that. And some of them like to do that, play. And other ones are like, nope, I don't want to do that, and it's
Yeah.
yeah.
And I guess one more question before we go. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've got anything planned, Shauna, but um are you going to be doing any like courses or anything where we mere mortals can learn how to communicate with our cats?
Yes. Yes. I love that you asked that. And that is actually on my list. It's been a while since I've done a class. I'm like, oh gosh, how long is it? I think it was like last year I did a class and it was so fun. And so that is actually on my list. I was thinking like in April to do like probably like a 6-week class because that's like that's a good, spot like 4 to 6 weeks because anything more it can be just a little much, right? A little overload. So I was definitely that's on my list to do that on Zoom to teach people how to do animal communication because what I love to inspire people is that everybody has that ability and they can tune into their pets and their life as well. I love to show people that because it really helps to deepen that connection with the pets in our life. It's really cool. So
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to learn more. I'm trying to work on all of that, and yeah, I'd love to be able to learn to
wow,
talk
look
to
at that.
Frankie.
Linda's like, okay, I'm ready. She said, great question. I love that. And I love that Lee asked, do I do personal sessions for teaching animal communication? It's so interesting you brought that up because when I did my class last year, and this might be something you might be interested in, Sharon, or maybe other people too, is after the class, I did do like a one-off like mentoring session with a couple people in there to kind of work with them with honing their individual skills because everybody has the own individual skill with animal communication and the way information comes through for me may be different than the way it comes through for you, right? And the animals all tell us different things too, so it's all different, so it's really cool. So yeah, so I will definitely it's definitely on my list. I figured it'd be a perfect time too after releasing my book and doing another class,
Mhm.
springtime, right? That time to kind of revitalize and yeah.
But yeah, no, get Shauna's book. That's all I can say. I loved it.
Oh, thank you so much, Sharon. That means so much to me. And then after the video, I'm going to put in the link here because today, so the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the ebook download. Oh, thank you, Lee. So the ebook download is free, and then you can still buy a physical copy though too, because I know I like to have a physical copy and I can sign it. And mail it to you too if you're interested in that, or you can get it on Amazon. So I'll put the information in the chat about the Amazon. And just thank you so much, Sharon, for being on my launch team and for spending this time with me because it's fun to hear your questions. Oh, thank you, Linda. It's fun to hear your questions and just have you read that. It was so cool. So thank you
Oh,
so
you're
much.
welcome.
And then thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And I will be back on live at Ooh, and it's 12:22. How cool. I'll be back on live at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time with my friend Carol to have like a different conversation about my book. So make sure to tune in then, and I'll probably be doing some other lives too, just popping in. So thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much, Sharon, and bye for now, guys. Thanks.